Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm going to talk about the Hifiman EF400 amp. It is a $600 all-in-one amp DAC, so it has a USB port on the back, and it's designed to power a large range of headphones. Now this was sent to me by Hifiman for review, so I want to give them a huge thanks. They never solicit any specific feedback prior to releasing the review, so huge thanks on that as well, because I can provide a fair and honest review for you all and hopefully help you decide if you want to purchase one or not. If you do, purchase it wherever you want. I'll have a link in the description for APOS audio. I've been using them a little bit more lately as a trusted seller of high-end audio, so I have no problem linking them. I did set up an affiliate program, so just to be clear, you can still purchase it however you want. I don't make reviews to do affiliate marketing. It's a great way to support the channel because I use all that money to buy more stuff to review, but that's literally it. Buy it wherever you want. If not, APOS is a good place to shop. They're reputable between warranties, the condition of the product, and even their return policy. So the EF400 is an interesting unit for a lot of reasons. So the dimensions were honestly kind of shocking. I thought, based off my pictures, I guess I should have looked more closely based off the port size, but I thought this unit was going to be a little bit more compact. I've seen some all-in-one units that are pretty tiny in comparison. However, so normally an R2R DAC, a resistor ladder DAC, is larger because you have this big bank of resistors. So if you're not stacking the product, typically it has to be quite wide. My review of the Denafrips Aries 2 DAC, which is an R2R DAC, was about the same size as this, and it was only a DAC. It had no amp. So it makes sense the more I think about it. However, this uses the Himalaya DAC found in the Hifiman Deva Pros. This has an R2R DAC inside. So this is a unique version of that. There's actually a couple different Himalaya DAC systems inside, or R2R stacks, because of the whole balanced, unbalanced chain and all that. But it's interesting size. So this is basically 8.5, I think it's about, well, let's say 9 inches if you include that front bezel that sticks out. And realistically, it's about 10 inches deep when you factor in the knob sticking out and the jacks on the back. When you have cables, plan for on at least 12 inches of depth, especially if you're using XLR outputs on the back. So let's talk about the outputs. Now on the back of the unit, you have your standard C13 NEMA connection. This is basically universal voltage. There is a voltage bias switch. So let's talk about this for a minute because I've seen some horror stories online. This is like printed backwards or something. I don't know why. It shows 115 on the label, but the switch that you move from left to right, you have to align it to the 230, which then shows the 115 inside. I don't know why it was done that way. Maybe they'll change it down the road. So please, if you bought this amp, let's say 3-4 months after my review, maybe they changed the printing of this, because I've seen some people post online that they flipped the switch and it was broken. So look at the red switch, and the red will expose which voltage it's set to, and mine shows the 115. So anyway, moving on. C13 plug. You have 2 USB ports. You have a USB-B and a USB Type-C. Now you can only use one at a time. There's no input select in the front, so just choose one over the other. There are no USB cables in the box. You have to use whatever cable you want, but luckily those two are pretty common connections at this point. You have your RCA out and a balanced out. These are fixed outputs, meaning they send your volume out at full volume regardless of what the front knob is doing. And when you would use that, if you want to use this as your DAC, take advantage of the R2R sound signature, but then hook this up to a power amplifier. integrated amp, whatever you're using to power a 2-channel or multi-channel system. Obviously, you're only feeding it stereo. So going on the front of the unit, I like this design a lot because of the way it's set up. I love the dual knob. I love the brushed aluminum and black. This is the only color finish it's available in, or design, I guess. And you have 4 different NOS, or no oversampling versus oversampling modes. I'll talk about how those modes impact the sound here shortly, but basically your outer ones are your low and high gain, no oversampling, and then the middle 2, which do light up when this unit's powered on, are your low and high gain oversampling. Moving inward from there, you have your 6.3 millimeter or 1/4 inch jack, 3.5 millimeter TRS, not TRRS, so no microphones obviously. Your 4.4 Pentacom, which is balanced, and then your 4-pin XLR, and then a really nice volume knob. The volume knob it feels really nice because of the size, and it's a real metal or aluminum volume knob with a really fine etching on it. So it feels great in the hand. The resistance is very light and it's very smooth. Some people like that, so I'll just describe how it feels. It's up to you if you like that feel or not. I typically prefer a little bit more weight, but it was very, very smooth. No static noises or anything like that when I was adjusting it. So the EF400, interesting in a lot of ways. I mentioned that earlier. So the size we covered. Now what's cool about this, and what some people will and will not like about this, is that is an R2R amp or DAC inside. R2R is not known to measure well. R2R is known to have its own unique sound signature, and not all R2R DACs are made equally. There are very inexpensive R2R systems out there that frankly do not sound that good, and there are expensive ones that some people may not like as well. So the Denafrip Series 2 I mentioned earlier, that's like $1,200 or $1,150 just for the DAC. It's a beautiful sounding DAC, so I was really hoping I would get close to that. This is asking a lot, close to that at half the price, but also have an amp built in. Now when I used my Aries 2, I was connecting it to a monoprice THX 887 amp. This is, I think, like a $300 headphone amp, tons and tons of power, very neutral and flat, almost dull sounding, so it kind of relies on the DAC to work some magic into the signal chain, otherwise it's kind of boring and flat. This particular one, I'll just go right into the sound signature and I'll talk about some other things I notice as I go. The EF400 has a slightly warmer sound signature than most of my other Delta Sigma solid state DACs. I haven't really compared this to tubes because that's a whole nother can of worms, and I'll talk about why. But slightly warmer, so a little bit warmer bass. It doesn't really impact the sub bass as much. It's not like I'm getting a boost to 20 hertz, but just the let's just say 40 hertz to, I don't know, 150 to 200 hertz. It's not that it's measuring this massive boost or anything, but when you listen to music, it carries just a little bit extra warmth down low. And I mainly tested on planar magnetic headphones. I did try on a lot of others, and there are surprising things with that. So we'll talk about headphone pairing as well. But it's a little bit warmer, and the highs are just a little bit softer, smoother sounding than what I think would come from a pure signal path. So if you have something like I have the Topping 830 D30 Pro stack, a little bit more expensive, very, very clean, zero distortion combo. Then I have the iFi, and those are behind me right now, but the Zencan Signature, the HFM edition, also $600, totally different sound profile. This is just a really unique way of presenting music, and I think it pairs best with Hifiman's own planar magnetic headphones. So if you are looking for something for your Aria Stealth or an HE1000 SE that's just a little bit different, not your perfectly measured flat signal path, which some people like, and that's fine. So this is going to be a really heated, I don't want to say debate, but there's a big heated conversation on this whole R2R versus Delta Sigma. This R2R system is introducing some distortion into the chain. Now you can measure synad and total harmonic distortion and all this stuff, and yeah, in some cases this won't measure well, and a lot of the times it will measure outside of human hearing for those issues, so in theory you shouldn't hear it, right? Well, just the way tubes can slightly distort your signal, some people like and prefer the way tubes sound. Not all distortion is bad from a sense of how we interpret the music. So I'm not sitting here trying to throw a bone to the EF400 and say, even though it doesn't measure great, it's an amazing amp, and it's for everybody because some are going to love it and some won't. I find, just to be straight up, these planars have a little bit stronger treble. 2,000 hertz, 3,000 hertz. Well, it dips at 2,000, then it starts picking back up closer to 3K and up. So there's an interesting treble profile, and I feel like this complements that well, especially in NOS mode, which is basically you're non-oversampling. It's whatever bit rate you're pumping it's going to send back out. And I really refer to the specs online. So if in case they ever change anything, just look at the specs if you're concerned with what bit depths this supports. I'm just talking about performance and sound quality. In NOS mode, even on my headphone measuring rig, which isn't like a Gross, it's not state of the art, but on my headphone rig, I measured a slight decrease in treble performance in the upper frequency on the same headphone. I did 3 tests each time, NOS versus oversampling, etc., back and forth. So it's smoother, and long story short, really, really love the way this sound with my planars. It just sounded incredible. Now, I didn't get the little extra sub-bass extension I would have hoped for, just a little bit extra, but you can do that with EQ. This is just something kind of like, records aren't going to measure better, or turntable, for example, but some people love the way it sounds. And I'm not saying this is that level of a change in sound quality. It is very similar to a standard Delta Sigma setup, but it's just a little bit more musical in a sense with the right pairing, because I can turn it up and have more fun playing my music. And it just sounds different than a lot of other stacks at this price range. Not necessarily better or worse, it's different. And I think having something different is good, because otherwise it gets old. A Corolla is a great passenger car to drive every day, but if it was so good at what it did for people's budget, everyone would be driving a Corolla, right? Some people just want something different. So this kind of just breaks the norm, and I like the sound. I found my topping stack, I think, had a better dead center when it came to imaging. So as far as the left and right channel balance goes, or performance, I was able to get just a slightly more pinpoint center reproduction of voices. Like, when I was listening to a couple songs from Billie Eilish, I have a huge range of music I like to test. But for some songs that are cut almost in mono, I like how the topping one presented that better. You can tell the intent of the artist was to be dead center. This gets really close, but I never found that perfect precision. Now, when I'm just listening to music and I'm not like hell-bent on finding the perfect example of how a product sounds, I'm just playing songs, I've listened to this more than a lot of my other setups because I like using my HE1000 SEs a lot, naturally. It's an insane headphone. And I just found this was really fun and agreeable to listen to for stuff like that. Now, you get into something like this. This is the HE560S, $200 headphone. Probably one of the best sub $200 headphones on the market. Just incredible soundstage, relatively flat tonality. So it's not a headphone review, but the reason why I'm saying this is because this has a very different sound profile than the HE1000 and the Aria and the Meze 99 Classics. And this sounded nice in a sense that these can sound almost a little sterile with some songs. And I think this kind of dulls down the upper frequencies a little bit, but I also lost a little bit of the soundstage this could do on a normal Delta Sigma amp. But I loved the warmth it brought to this particular headphone. I found the soundstage to just be slightly better, and the imaging just slightly better on my topping stack. I think that was probably one of the best when it came to channel balance and all that. But it was still really, really enjoyable to listen to, and I hadn't heard the 560 sound that way. So it was actually a surprisingly good pairing. I still really enjoyed it. Now, a not good pairing was the 99 Classics from Meze. These do not scale well, which means you don't need to buy a really expensive amplifier setup to get more out of it. And they're already a very warm sounding headphone, not a lot of resolution to it. So this is not the type of amp you want for that type of sound profile. And then even the Odyssey Euclids, these are planar magnetic IEMs, about $1,000. They're actually harder to drive than I expected. And even on the balance connector, it sounded great. I feel like this is not really an intended pairing. I thought it would have sounded better because, planar, but these are tuned differently. So I didn't really like this combo. I felt like these do better on something that's a little bit more, I guess, flat sounding. So I don't want this review to be confusing, and I didn't want to structure my feedback on the sound quality too much because I have spent so many hours on this amp prior to my review, more so than I think I've done on any other headphone amp, because it kept surprising me with the way different songs sounded. And I often went back to a lot of old songs, libraries, albums that I hadn't listened to for a while, just to re-listen to it on this. And I loved so many songs. It wasn't perfect for everything, but I think that's really what's important at the end of the day, is the music and enjoying what you listen to. And this was just a fun way to present something. So I do want to say a couple of quick things. The balanced outputs are louder naturally than unbalanced, but I also noticed the 3.5 millimeter was a little bit quieter than the 1/4 inch. I don't know if that's just my unit or intentional or not, but the same headphone was louder with a 1/4 inch adapter at the exact same setting. So that was interesting. So if you want the highest possible output, this says they rated it up to 4.4 watts per channel. They didn't state the impedance, but I think based off the output current, it's close to like at 50 ohms. Either way, the balanced output's going to give you more power. It's definitely louder. I think there's other ones that are louder for less money, but louder isn't always better. That's so much power that it's ear damaging anyway. So I don't really need to go full blast regardless. No special drivers needed, just plug it in and go. It worked fine on my Mac, worked fine on my Windows machine. For the gamers out there, this does not work on PlayStation. It's not UAC 1, so just treat this as your audiophile product. I don't think this is like the one solution I would use for everything. This is one of those things where I would rather, if I'm buying multiple pieces of equipment, I love the idea of a flat Delta Sigma setup, a nice R2R stack or setup like this, and then playing around with tubes, which again also use distortion to change the sound. And you can talk to a lot of people out there that say they love their tube amps. So it's a different sound. That's okay. And that's really what it comes down to. So yeah, I hope you found this review helpful and I didn't make it worse. I know I'm forgetting some things here. I'm just trying to think before I wrap this up. Obviously, with the way the power cord was, the power supply is in here. It's a copper clad wounded transformer, so it's got some weight to it. It weighs almost 7 pounds. This thing is super hefty. A lot of that comes from the power supply, but my unit didn't have any humming or buzzing issues. I saw that some people did on the early production side. So just to cover that, that was why I didn't release my review for a long time, is I've been using this primarily for all of my listening for weeks, if not probably about maybe 40 days now since I got it. And I never had any hum issues. The only bug I had, which was more of a tidal bug on Apple, is when I did exclusive mode, the volume was halved basically, and I could hit full volume on high gain and it wasn't loud enough. In Tidal, you have to turn off loudness normalization once you're in exclusive mode. You just go to File Settings. That fixed that problem. Aside from that, this thing has been super solid. I did notice there's a little pop when you go from oversampling to no oversampling. It's not really loud, but you can tell the board is switching modes while you're listening to music, so I would keep your volume low when you do that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Would this be my only one I would own? No. I would prefer to have one that's more on the flat side and do more EQ. But as far as just having fun and listening to music, I absolutely love this thing. I think it's a blast. And at $600, honestly, it packs a lot of stuff in a really good price range with good output. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this. You made it to the end. I rambled, but I hope you found this helpful in some way. If you did, great. If not, shoot me a comment below. I'm looking to obviously improve my channel all the time. With that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.